Hey, to finish off this very long Starfather series, I thought it would be fun to have an interview with all of the developers of the path, which has to be one of the best Hoi4 paths I've ever played, and at the very least, one of the paths that has had the most work obviously go into making it. So here's that interview. I've never done something like this before, but I hope you all enjoy it. It was very fun, and all of the devs are very nice.
Yeah, I got enough whiskey for this, so let's go.
Good.
My name is Lillian, and I am a junior writer for the Equestria War team. I joined, a few months before the patch was supposed to be released, and I wanted to join because I wanted to get Zebraca out the door.
I am Podrick Equus. I joined the team on April 2nd of 2021. I thought it was a April Fool's joke, only to discover that it was not. I had originally wanted to join the team because I hated the Dread League so much that I wanted to rework it. And now I am a senior writer, and I am the lead writer for the rework of the Dread League.
That's really cool too. The Dread League has a special place in my heart. I spent way too much time editing it myself.
My name is Cyrus. I'm an alcoholic. I've been working on EAW for 5 years at this point. I joined roughly after the mod started, and I joined because I was very bored. There's genuinely no higher reasoning for it. I'm one of the lead developers of the mod.
I guess we should mention that Cyrus was the lead developer for the Ascendancy. Myself and Lillian did all of the writing for the guide in the Ascendancy, and I did the majority of writing for the rest of the Ascendancy.
Like all the other events and
writers
the
doing
focus.
Yeah.
This is the question that a million people asked when I said I was going to do this. What's the inspiration for the path?
Oh god.
That's a question for Cyrus.
Alright, so I need you to understand before we get into this that you're getting demonetized to hell and back after I start explaining this. You also need to understand that I do not support the people that I'm going to be explaining today, blah blah, etc., you know, the usual disclaimers. Considering I'm a historian by trade, or rather a historian in training, I at one point stumbled upon like a correspondence between, Joseph Broz Tito, since I live in ex-Yugoslavia, and a fellow by the name of Miguel Serrano. I didn't really think much of it because the university project at the time that I was dealing with was essentially this whole, how Yugoslavia interacted with various foreign powers. Now, of course, I found it very interesting that Yugoslavia corresponded, that the leader of Yugoslavia corresponded with Chile, etc., etc. So I start looking into this Miguel Serrano fellow, and that's when I roughly entered into a rabbit hole. See, Miguel Serrano is a very interesting individual in the sense that he's arguably the person who co-founded one of the most batshit insane ideologies in human existence. That being esoteric Hitlerism, which in the bluntest possible terms, without getting too much into academic nonsense, was effectively him claiming that Hitler was a reincarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu. Now, of course, the story gets a bit wilder because he wasn't the only person who was responsible for the founding of this ideology. You also have a Hoi4 modding darling, I think, when it comes to stupid paths. I think she even makes an appearance in one of your Red Flood videos, Savitra Devi.
Yeah, I played that path in Red Flood.
Like the Avatar path for India, I remember that. And this entire shtick essentially started when Savitra Devi claimed that she had astral projection sex with Hitler. Anyhow, I got admittedly a bit obsessed with this stupid fucking concept because Miguel Serrano as a person is exceptionally interesting. At the end of the day, he was an explorer. He was a correspondent with multiple global leaders, such as the Prime Minister of India, such as the current Dalai Lama. And that was the initial inspiration for the Starfather, but I can tell you one thing, the stuff you see in the Starfather, it's basically a slightly more sanitized version of this entire ideology that Serrano was co-founding with Savitra Devi.
Was a pretty big inspiration kind of TNO Burgundy too? Would you say that influenced it at all? I noticed a lot of similarities.
No, I think TNO Burgundy is one of the single worst countries I've played in any Hoi4 mod. I can understand why people would consider it, considering Himmler himself was also very much into the esoteric and such, so,
I think people might have mistakenly believed that there were similarities between the two because they both happened to like the color purple.
Well, it wasn't even the color for me. For me, it was the guide mechanic, because the guide mechanic involved a lot of locations that had a % chance of completion, which is very similar to TNO Burgundy, which had its entire, discovery system where you had a ton of locations that had % chance of completion that you could use other things to buy a higher % chance. That was the most similar factor to me. So this is a pretty big path, obviously. When did you first have the idea for this path? Like, when you can give a date or some time in development, and then when did you begin developing the path?
The initial concept was started roughly a year ago. Don't quote me on that. I've made so much content that it genuinely just sort of does blur together past a certain point.
I vaguely recall you getting the art done for Hiram from Scroop early in 2021.
Jesus Christ, has it really been that long? Yeah, I can't give you a concrete answer because, as I said, it just sort of blends together.
This might be easier to answer then. When was it finished in development? Was it one of the last things that was finished, or was this done for a little while there?
Depends on the segment, the basics of the path, that being the focus tree, the various decisions, the various smaller mechanics as are from the journal. They were finished, I believe, 5 or so months before the release, or somewhere thereabout. But the journal itself took a lot longer because you have people from TNO working on the person working on the journal, that being Scars, who unfortunately could not be here today. He was also busy with TNO stuff, specifically making GUIs. Kingston was also a notable contributor to the localization. I just checked, mostly because he did the initial trees.
Kingston did the first few events, which heavily helped me figure out what the rest of the events should be like.
And so I guess kind of continuing on from this, if you had to give this path, only the specific path after the Civil War, the Third Civil War starts, a percentage for how much of the North Zebrica content it contains, like what percent does it make up of the entire update?
Roughly 10%.
Yeah, that's actually pretty significant considering how many paths there are.
Again, most of it comes from the GUI elements, but at the end of the day, for example, the focus tree is a lot smaller in comparison to what we have in other tags. For example, Chiroptera, although it doesn't look like it, has 576 focuses or somewhere thereabout.
And I guess last question about like development stuff. Was there anything that was significantly technically challenging, or just mainly the GUI?
I mean, the GUI for the most part have been technically challenging for me because I'm a smooth brain by nature, but thankfully we had Scars to handle that.
I actually do have a story that Scars would tell this if he was here. As you know, with the guide's journal, you have a percent chance to complete any given expedition, and you can click on that percent chance to open up a little sub-menu that will give you options to increase your odds of success. That generated an error in the error log. Fine, it didn't break anything, but it just happened to show up in the error log. Another developer saw that error and went ahead and fixed that error, which caused the percentages to not appear. For the initial release of Zebrica up until our first hotfix, there was no way to tell how likely your expedition was to succeed, because the odds of success just didn't appear. So the moral of the story is don't touch other people's code.
Looking at it from a different perspective in terms of difficulty, of course, depending on what happens, it can be vastly different for everybody, but on a scale of 1 to 10, based on EAW difficulties, how hard would you rank it for people who want to play it themselves?
I'd say 7.
The hard part is finding it.
Yeah.
If you don't know what to do, then you're very unlikely to stumble upon it by accident.
Yeah, and that actually moves perfectly right into the next question, which was actually asked by a viewer. How do you feel about the path being so difficult to access? Like, unless you play this mod a lot, and specifically play Cultage a lot, or had someone tell you how to get it, you're probably never going to find it. Would you prefer for it to have been easier for people to reach, considering how well made it was?
This actually has a lot to do with my personal philosophy when it comes to modding that sort of developed while I was a big old fan of some guy 2000 who's a famous fucking Fallout New Vegas modder. And essentially, like, the central aspect of his modding the ideas was that, you add things for people to find. Whether they find it or whether they don't find it is relevant, as at the end of the day, someone is going to enjoy it.
It's always fun to have a little hidden path for your players to discover.
One of the greatest feelings in this sort of game is finding a rabbit hole and then seeing exactly how deep it goes. Cultage and its various paths and breakaways are part of that.
That's good. Very simple, and also from a viewer. Why purple?
Because I really like Spyro.
Fair.
That is genuinely as deep as it goes. That's just, there's no deeper meaning. I mean, I'm fucking lying. The actual reasoning is because purple it's a very mystical color in that sense, but it's also relevant to the nation because the Phoenicians themselves were famous for their purple coloring. So we figure, yeah, it's a nice little aesthetic decision.
Yeah, it's also the coolest color that you can change text to in Hoi4 by default. I'll say that.
Yeah, fair enough.
If anybody is like curious, I believe the exact shade of purple that the like the clothing the folks in the Ascendancy like to wear is Stygian.
So we sort of talked, well, we didn't sort of talk. We talked a lot about the inspiration for the path in general. Was there a certain inspiration for the guide and the journey?
I jumped on ship after all that was decided.
Scars came up with the character of the guide, and the initial idea was essentially, it kind of goes back to Miguel Serrano in a way, mostly because Miguel Serrano was known to have a bunch of weird-ass friends. So I kind of want to represent that in a very joking way by taking the EAW equivalents and representing them to a certain extent. Of course, at the end of the day, that, you know, kind of would have been weird if you had Hiram going about and like talking to his random-ass friends to collect these alchemical ingredients. The alchemy was always a part of it. The guide was very much conceptualized by Scars for that purpose.
And then I guess we've already talked about it a little bit. What was the process of writing the guide's journey, and what was that like?
So I was actually brought on to deal solely with the guide. And from the beginning, I kind of fell in love with her storyline. And I really started to develop it as, how does the common equestrian see what Hiram is doing and what's happening in the Ascendancy? All of her storylines really serve as a foil for the ideology that Hiram posits. I took on a lot of the role, and I did all the equestrian, the Echos events.
We did work together a lot to make sure that the guide's events were consistent with one another and that they were portrayed as well as they could be.
Yeah, we worked together a lot on characterization.
She is a heavily indoctrinated member of the Ascendancy's religion. She starts to see some of the flaws in her own beliefs, and she becomes uncertain about a few things. When someone is like that, they can either go one of two ways. They can either actually begin to leave their cult, or they can double down in hopes that their beliefs will be
Validated.
validated. Yes. I hope that answers the question well.
Yeah, it does. It also makes me think, do you consider the guide to be a tragic character? I wouldn't, but do you see the guide as a tragic character?
I absolutely would. One of the things that we really tried to represent was that she's not a good person at all. She's still a horrible cultist, and even if she does sort of redeem herself at the end, ultimately it is a tragedy. All of her companions that she met along the way have died, left, or been killed even at her hooves.
We had to remove a lot of hands during the writing process.
Not surprising. There was a lot of hints throughout the entire thing that the guide would be redeemed, but she never was. Was there a reason that you didn't want to have her do something at the very end I don't think she could have really been redeemed at the end of the story, no matter what she did, but is there a reason that you didn't have her have any massive change of heart before kind of a little bit at the very end there?
There are a lot of changes that happen over time, but there's no one real defining moment until the very, very end.
I'd say that the biggest shock that she gets is after she realizes that the guidance has left her. That causes her to basically sit down and think about everything that she's done in her life up to that point. Subtext from that, from her final letter to the Starfather, where she doesn't refer to him by the honorable title that she usually does. I think you can make something from these ingredients. I'm going to be going away for a while. I'll be back when you finish everything.
Necessarily have anything to add other than the one of the fucking worst images our dev team has ever drawn, I guess. Yeah, just for context, canonically this is what the Starfather ends up looking like by the end of it. Mostly because a couple of the potions actually require the user to be in peak physical condition. There you go. I figured, your audience deserves to see this beautiful piece of art.
So I guess it's time to get into more of the, I don't know, maybe tinfoily stuff. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but maybe. There's lots of good and evil magic that is existing throughout the world of EAW, but the event following the Transcendence event and the leader description of the Godhead sort of implies that maybe some of this stuff, like the super projects and the guidance, could be a little bit more on the make-believe side or the in their subconscious side. You don't have to say whether or not that's correct, but do you think that's a valid takeaway, or should things be taken more literally?
My ultimate intention was for the player themselves to decide whether they want to believe him or not. I mean, it's a valid interpretation. He might have actually been right, but on the other hand, you know, he might have consumed some of the most dangerous potions known to man and might have atomized himself. At the end of the day, both are equally valid explanations for what happens.
After all, the most important thing a religion can have is faith.
And I guess with the going back a little to the Transcendence event, what's up with goats?
Oh, nothing. We just thought it was a funny joke. I will say that it's a thing that's not going to really be understood unless you've taken way too many Indo-European mythology bullshit. But long story short, goats, very long tradition in the mystic arts, blah, blah, blah. So it can be taken figuratively because certain characteristics are ascribed to them, blah, 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 etc., etc. Not literally goats. It's not literally goats.
It's kind of hoping that there was going to be some sort of, I don't know, kind of like the ending credits in Marvel movies build up to some secret goat god path, you know? I was kind of hoping for that, but after thinking about it, I decided that probably wasn't going to happen. But hey, there's an idea.
This reminded me of the worst goddamn thing I've seen in a while. It's the Kingsman movie where they just like do one of those Marvel ending slides just for Hitler himself.
Oh.
I forgot about that.
I wanted to have one of the artists draw a goat's eye for the final event picture, but that never happens.
That being said, there is one thing that the Starfather is ambiguously right about, and that being the fact that the penguins are evil beyond comprehension. But since you did mention it, past a certain point, we were planning on doing, this was one of the things cut for time constraints, but we were planning on doing a somewhat joking penguin path that was essentially a response to the Starfather, if you as the Starfather conquered the penguins. Because, as we put it, the event response for the penguins when they hear the Starfather's announcement that he's going to kill them all is, oh no, they're finally beginning to awaken. The idea was that there would have been a game rule that you could have triggered, which is Hard Mode Starfather, in which the penguins do in fact possess ancient alien technology and they're going to fight against you.
But that would have been quite the path there. Epic climax battle against the penguins.
Again, the problem was that very much mechanical constraints because we wanted to have them have a very Necron vibe if you have played Warhammer 40k or anything related to it. And just like it was too late in development. I mean, not too late in development, just everyone wanted to release North Zebra already, and adding a stupid meme path at the end of it wouldn't have been received well by the team. I still want to go back and add it eventually, but you know, there you go.
And this is another question from a viewer, but when you had people first test the path, what feedback did you get from the testers?
I don't even remember anymore.
I think the biggest complaint that people had was there's no naval stuff.
Oh yeah, the naval stuff.
Well, in the new
path
update, it'll be
issues.
fine because you can steal navies, but yeah.
Yeah.
I completely forgot the navies exist. That's the reason.
Yeah, I really like the canon reason behind why there's no easy way to build a navy is navy was forgotten about. That's good. That's what I wanted to hear.
Shipbuilders left to the Ascendancy. You see, boats are the work of the avian, and you can't use anything that's...
I guess this kind of leads in from the Navy thing, but how do you all feel about how the path turned out? Is there something that you wish was different about it?
No, I think it turned out pretty well. I think we did more or less what we set out to do.
I am very happy with how it ended up.
In terms of the path, I'm just happy with it. I got no real complaints. People enjoy it, I enjoy it, and there you go.
If I had been working on the Starfather since the inception of the guide, I would have liked for the player to be able to tackle any continent in any order, to be able to make a choice, at least one choice during each continent, and then we would get a different ending for the guide based upon which order you did the continents in and which choices you made. But currently there is only one superficial choice that you can make. So there's only one ending. I would have liked for there to be more endings, but oh well.
Honestly, the problem was constraints. At the end of the day, is just we initially discussed something like that, but it was found to be extremely impractical and extremely difficult to do. So that was the reason why that wasn't done like that.
So that one superficial choice made a lot of people get angry at me because they thought that it would have actually influenced the outcome. I think that was pretty fun. I had a pause to think of what to do for a little while there, so you did a good job setting that up.
I did actually tear up a little bit when I was writing.
Yeah, it was good.
Especially the other one that you didn't choose.
Yeah, I'll have to play through the entire thing again to figure out that one. I probably have a save file.
You have to get the rarest event in the game.
Oh yeah, the Moonburger event. So theoretically speaking, if Chiriptera survives, and specifically if it goes the ocean spray path, Hiram finds a person who's roughly on the same wavelength as him in terms of insanity, and they end up sharing a burger.
You can't say that and not post the art.
Where is it? God damn it! Where is the fucking?
That's so sad that I didn't get to see that. I would have loved that.
It's it's the single rarest event in the game for a reason. I mean, I just found more of the buff Starfather at the moment.
Great buff Starfather material. I'll post it all over the thumbnail.
He is the buff father. Thank you.
The Star Spotter, if you will.
The star spotter.
There was a group of devs who just kept calling him Star Daddy.
Oh no, not surprising.
In the Moonburger event. So the Ascendancy makes a point that like capitalism is an avian construct, and that any equine that practices capitalism is a crypto-avian. Hiram makes an exception for the Moonburger, and he has one made. If you get the event, he talks about having a Moonburger built in Cultage.
So I guess last question: what should people look forward to in Equestria at War going forward from here?
Well, I mean, the next big project that we're doing is the Great Lakes. Alongside that, we're probably gonna do Kyria, and after that, a couple of things, well, minor Aquilian stuff.
And the polar bears.
And the polar bears in addition to it. And then finally, God help us all, back with rework. Yeah, right. We've officially started with it, and I get to do Thorax.
Yeah, meanwhile, I am sitting in my little frozen corner of the realm, waiting for Neither to continue coding the Dread League so I can continue writing for it.
Long story short, there's always a lot of projects being worked on. When they're going to be released very much depends on the people's personal lives, and you have to take into consideration a lot of our best developers have started university, and first year of university or college is always hellish.
So I think that's good. I will end the recording now unless someone wants to jump in and say something.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Anyways, that's the end of the interview and officially the end of the series too now. If you all want me to make more interview videos like this with the developers of paths after I do a long series playing a path, let me know. I could probably do that, but I don't know how popular stuff like this will be. We'll see. I'll see you all next time.